Shin from her book, The Game of Life and How to Play It. All the good that is to be made manifest in our life is already an accomplished fact in divine mind and is released through our recognition or spoken word. So we must be careful to decree that only the divine idea be made manifest, for often we decree through our idle words failure or misfortune. On the screen, you can find the affirmation for this month. Let us use the power of our words to decree it onto manifestation together. Today, I commit to creating my brightest future by knowing all adversity dissolves with the constant conviction that there is a pattern of health, wealth, and love within me that is greater and more powerful than any sickness, injury, or seeming lack or limitation.
Thank you, Nancy. So this month, the focus is on creating a life that works without all the work, which is what our teaching is all about. And so you've had two wonderful manifestations of that. The first 2 weeks of this month, I heard wonderful things about both of those talks. And so my intention today is to focus on some particular things using the word work actually as a way to look at what are some things, what are ways that we can apply spiritual principles and then really leave the rest to the divine so that our life works more easily and effortlessly without all the hard work. So many of us have been taught, it's part of the conditioning of culture for the most part. I'm not saying everybody is in this position. The idea of struggle and strife, that you have to work hard, you have to struggle, you have to strive in order to have an existence. And so what we're learning in this teaching, which is so freeing, and what I love about it, is that that is actually a false belief. That when we truly understand how to use universal law, use the universal principle, that life can be much, much, much more easy and effortless than we've thought it could have been up to this moment. And why? Because our word, today we're going to be talking about our word has power. And there is a universal law that is all around us. And because it's non-local, which means that it exists in a different realm, a different dimension, universal law, and also our word, believe it or not, exists in a different dimension than the physicality that we are using actually spiritual power each time we use our word, and we're using a neutral law that just simply takes the impress of our thought and brings it into manifestation. So what is a life that works? It may be unique to you, but in general, a life that works involves things like this: living from our authentic self, which means living in the present moment, in the now, instead of in the past or the future. Feeling connected to Source. A life that works also includes health, radiant health and vibrancy, and lots of energy to accomplish the things we choose to accomplish. A life that works is living in or feeling like we're in the flow financially. And again, instead of having it be a struggle, that there's more of a sense of flow. Seeming miracles just happen. We used to call them maybe coincidences, but as we get into these spiritual teachings, we realize there's something called synchronicity, and that when we are awake to it, we begin to see it more, and when we're grateful for it, more of these seeming miracles continue to reveal themselves. A life that works includes loving, solid relationships, a sense of peace and happiness, feeling guided and protected, joyfully sharing our talents and gifts, and loving our work, whatever it might be. And also, there is that awareness that we are one. So there is a great inner desire to serve and to give of ourselves to others. So, again, what are we saying yes to? That's what our question is for today. What are we saying yes to in our lives? Because this is how it works. We can say yes to things that make our lives easier, or yes to things that make life more difficult. And with this understanding of universal law and it being neutral, we can be more mindful. So today we're going to be tuning into mindfulness, being more aware, more mindful of what it is that we are saying yes to. And so we'll be getting into that a little bit more as I move along. The idea is that we want to say yes to things that work. So we create a life that works without all the work. You want me to say that again? Say yes to what works, to creating a life that works without all the work. Okay, so W. W is for word power. Our spoken word is the most powerful tool of the mind. The spoken word. You know, we hear a lot about our thoughts, but really it's the spoken word that has the most power. I'd like to share a story with you, actually something that happened recently. My sister Marcia lives in Florida. She lives in West Palm Beach. And so many of you know that Hurricane Irma just recently went through that area. And we were in England when she was trying to make a decision whether to pack up all of her pets and leave or to stay put where she was. And so after some hemming and hawing back and forth, she decided to stay. Put up her shutters, did all the preparations that people in Florida are taught to do, or anybody who's in the path of a hurricane, which is to fill up your bathtub with water. You know, if you're out of electricity or whatever, you want to have sufficient water to make lots of ice. She cooked everything in her freezer so that in case the refrigerator was out for a period of time, that she'd have food available. She even got the intuition to pull her car out of the parking lot and in between the buildings. She lives in an area where they are duplexes. And then she also encouraged her neighbor to do the same who was parking next to her. So they pulled their cars in between the buildings out of the parking lot. And then she did what she's been taught to do because she's also a one who has studied the science of mind. And in fact, at one point, she was a practitioner. So she called me. Not called me. She texted me and asked me to pray and asked me to ask our practitioners to pray for the protection of her home and her property and all of that. So, fast forward. This is what's resulted. She's actually made a video of it.
This is the line of protection you guys gave me in front of my house.
So you see the trees that came
Nothing
down.
came. It protected all of us. I'm having a hard time seeing because the sun's so bright right now. But see this line of protection? Thank you, everybody. I love you.
So she talks about the line of protection. One of the things that I asked her to do, and I was doing myself, was there is a prayer of protection by Freeman, by James Dillett. Okay, wait a second. Let me just find his name. It's over here. By James Dillett Freeman. And it goes like this. The light of God surrounds me. The love of God enfolds me. The power of God protects me. The presence of God watches over me. Wherever I am, God is. So this is what she did. And I was doing it as well, and I was seeing her entire property surrounded in light. So every time I would stop while we were vacationing, and it would come to mind, I would again see her property surrounded in light, the protection of God. So let's do that. I'm going to go ahead and read it line by line and let you say that with me. But I'm going to use us this time. The light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. The presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is. Powerful, powerful, powerful. The spoken word. The power of the spoken word. Sometimes we can really underestimate that. Yes? The spoken word has such power. And again, I'm just going to repeat what Florence Scovel Shinn said. She said, just the last part of it, we must be careful to decree that only the divine idea be made manifest, for often we decree through our idle words failure or misfortune. So what does this mean? What does this mean, decreeing failure or misfortune? Every time we speak, every time we have a conversation, when we are talking about something that's not working in our lives, no matter what it is, we are using our word power and bringing it into manifestation. What are some things that you find yourself bringing up in conversation that you don't want to be replanted into the universal soil, creative medium, or the law to be returned back to you? I'd like you to reflect on that a moment. What is it? Because you have the power to stop that. And usually it's some sort of story we're telling related to the past. And when I say story, I don't mean that it didn't happen, that it wasn't a fact, but I mean when we retell it, it's already something from the past, and we're just simply recreating it. We talk about this a lot, but it's important to really begin to become more aware of what flows through our lips and out into creation. I love what this beautiful little note from the universe that speaks to this so beautifully. And this is what he says. Psst, not that you ever would, but when someone tells their best friend about their difficult day or how tricky relationships have been, or that they have a jolly good life except financially, not only do they relive unpleasantness, but they commission all the elements to project into their future whatever they are claiming. Signed, the universe. And Ernest Holmes had a beautiful way of defining heaven. He said, heaven is when nothing goes forth from us other than that which we would be glad to have returned to us. That's when we are living a heavenly state of consciousness. Because heaven in New Thought is here and now. It's a state of mind. It's not some place that you go to in the future. It's something that we create right here in this human form. And it's created by what transpires in what we speak into being. There's an old saying that says, if we take care of the pennies, the dollars will take care of themselves. So there are something like 6,000 thoughts a day that go through our minds, scientists tell us. And, we say change your thinking, change your life. However, it's really, if we try to change every single thought, all of those 60,000 thoughts that go through our minds a day, we would exhaust ourselves. So The truth is, because spoken word is so powerful, if we get into the habit of speaking affirmations, words of truth, catching ourselves when we get ready to tell a story and to say something else, then what we are doing is, and this is the way the principle works, if we take care of our words, then our thoughts will follow. Isn't that a relief? If we take care of our words, our thoughts will follow. That's why we encourage people to say your prayers out loud. Use the power of your word as much as possible. So again, words affirm and confirm life that works. When we use our words in that way, then our life becomes more easy and effortless. So that's W. So how about O? Well, a couple weeks ago, we talked about something called the one thing, and Dan and Donna helped us to tune into this idea of the one thing. And the one thing, the idea of the one thing, if we focus on one thing that can really help to shift our lives, it makes our life much more easy and effortless than if we try to do a whole bunch of different things. So the question from last month was, what is the one thing I can do such that by doing it, everything else will be easier or unnecessary? And we learned that we could focus it on different aspects of our lives. Physical health, key relationships, job, whatever it might be, we could tailor it to that. You know, I have been contemplating that question quite a bit recently. And you know what's come to me is it's all about being. If we focus on being, then everything else takes care of itself. And that goes back to the principle of, I remember the first time I heard this principle, it was from Neil Donald Walsh years and years and years ago. Be, do, have. How many of you have heard that before? Yeah, be, do, have. If we focus on who we are being, we put our focus there, and that's our internal work, then that state of being or that state of mind automatically causes us to take positive action, to do the things that are necessary to have what it is that we choose to have. And so many of us have been conditioned to do it backwards. To first of all want to have something. Well, if I have the right relationship, if I have the right job, if I have perfect health, if I have peace of mind or whatever, if I have these things, if I have the car, the house, the vacation, you know, whatever it is, if I have these things, then I'll be happy. But what does that do? It's very disempowering. It always makes our happiness dependent on something external to us. So this is entirely, completely backwards to the way many of us have been taught. The first thing that's important is for us to be happy, to be peace, to be joy, to be wisdom, and to claim it. And we claim it with the power of our word. I am happy. I choose happiness. Right here and right now, I choose peace of mind. I choose love. I know that I am love. When we do that, then again, our actions are informed by our state of mind, and our actions then attract into our lives the things that we desire. And it's also important to remember that what we want truly is the essence of that thing that we desire. And that way we give the universe a lot more options of how to bring that essence of what it is that we want into our lives, whether it is a cozy home or a loving relationship or whatever it is. So again, be, do, have. So that's the one thing. Focus on being. The other thing that the one thing question does is it focuses us on the here and now, which is where God resides, which is where our true self, our authentic self resides. Charles Fillmore, in Talks of Truth, said, God's beautiful universe is all about us, only awaiting our acknowledgement of its presence. Let us know God and live with love and joy and health and peace here and now. And that's just a beautiful reminder to me of what Florence Scovel Shinn was trying to get across, is that the perfection and the wholeness and the beauty and the grace and the abundance of God is already here and now. All we need do is recognize it and allow it into our lives. So it's really about, what I'm realizing more and more, it's about letting go of the resistance within us to what's already present for us. Because it's all about receiving. So many of us, yes, it's important to give too, but we can only receive as much as we are able to mentally, spiritually. And again, through the power of our word, we allow ourselves to receive the already present divine idea of our lives. The one thing. So let's talk about multitasking. How many of you think that multitasking is more How many of you think that multitasking is more efficient? Raise your hands. Oh, nobody's going to raise their hands. Oh, one person did. Well, it's interesting because neuroscience proves that it isn't. That it's actually, neuroscience says that multitasking drains the energy reserves of your brain. That constant switching back and forth between different things reduces the quality of your work, takes longer than doing one task at a time, and then there's a biological cost. Stress, exhaustion, the using up of the glucose in the body, again, the reserves of the brain. Actually, the breaking down of the brain cells, it's really something. And also people eat more and usually drink more caffeine and maybe get involved in addictions more frequently when they are in the habit of trying to multitask. So let's take a breath on that one. And you know what? Multitasking can show up in a lot of different ways. Here's an example of one I caught myself at just recently. I was driving in our neighborhood, headed off, I can't even remember where, and my purse, which was open, fell over from the passenger seat onto the floor. And I reached down to get it. And just in that moment, when I came up, my car was like headed for the tree in that just very short time. And fortunately, I was going only about 15 miles an hour, but still, that's multitasking, trying to do that and drive at the same time. And you may think of a lot of other things. They can be little things. I was noticing, as I was walking last night, thinking about this whole concept of multitasking, and my mind was going over the Sunday message that I'm delivering to you right now. And I thought, I'm multitasking. I'm doing that instead of just being present for the amazing beauty of nature all around me. And so I just made a decision, and I decided just to focus on what we did yesterday in our retreat. One of the things we did, which was conscious walking, walking very consciously, a walking meditation, and then just noticing all of the beauty of nature around me as I was proceeding. And what a different experience than having all of this mental chatter. Even though it was positive mental chatter, it still was multitasking. My mind was busy while I was walking. So it can be very subtle things like that we do unconsciously that take us out of the present moment, which means it takes us out of that full experience of God, of our divine selves, of our authentic nature, and it means that we miss out on so much good in life. Just simple things like that. So multitasking is not the answer to a better life. It's actually doing one thing at a time. And again, that question, what is the one thing I can do such that by doing it, everything else will be easier or unnecessary? Well, my answer to that personally is live in the now. Live in the now and do one thing at a time. Poet Billy Collins said, "We call it multitasking. A Buddhist would call this the monkey mind." So it's the monkey mind in expression, right? We think we're mastering multitasking, but we're just driving ourselves bananas. So if we want less work, then I say, let's say yes to doing one thing at a time in a beautiful, focused way. So again, applying that one thing concept to physical health, what is the one thing I can do to achieve my greater health and vitality? That by doing it, everything else will be easier and unnecessary. I say live in the now. But it can be whatever it is for you. For key relationships, what's the one thing I can do to show more love to my partner or spouse? Again, for me, the answer is be more present when I'm with Dan instead of having my mind going a lot of different places.
Amen.
What's the one thing I can do to be more productive so that by doing it, everything else will be easier and necessary? Focus on one thing at a time. This is my solution, but whatever it is for you. Finances, what is the one thing I can do to support my financial freedom such that by doing it, everything else will be easier or unnecessary? So you see how you can hone it in. And I'm re-bringing that up because I think this is such a great question to help us live in the now and really enjoy our lives more fully, be happier people. And so the R stands for relationship with God. How is your relationship with the divine right here and right now in this moment? Well, one of the things that I have found is the more that I give priority to my relationship with the divine through my spiritual practice, through being mindful, just practicing it throughout the day by being mindful and coming back into the present moment, the less work my life seems to be. K for knowing. Knowing the spiritual truth. When we know the spiritual truth, we live in a state of exaltation. We live as exalted beings that we are meant to be. Things like knowing who I am. I'm pure spirit. I am the light of the divine individualized. I am love. I am peace. I am joy. I am, and you can go on, the truth, the absolute truth of who we are. And also, because of who I am abundance. I have a right to experience abundance. I'm love, so I have a right to experience love. And then also the awareness that within us is the golden Buddha. I understand that you heard about the golden Buddha last week, yes? It's a great story. The golden Buddha that is, how many of you have not heard that story before? Raise your hands. Okay. I'll just do it very briefly. So, some time ago, in ancient times, there was a golden Buddha. And there were some people the people who were in charge of it, probably because of maybe being attacked by someone else, they decided to cover it all over with plaster. So some years later, the people I guess they had lost the awareness that what was underneath. The monks who were tending it and caring for it, and it was part of a monastery, thought that it was a clay Buddha, that it was made out of clay. And so one day, I guess it was beginning to crack a little bit, and a little gleam of light came through, and the monk, peeled it away and saw gold underneath, and went and got the other monks, and pretty soon they uncovered the whole entire thing. And it's just a beautiful metaphor for who we are in truth. The clay covering it's not really just the body. The clay covering is the conditioned mind. The ideas that we have that we're anything other than whole, perfect, and complete, beautiful creations of the divine, pure spirit in body, beings that are eternal and unlimited, beings of power whose word has power to create the life that we choose. That's the covering. So as we begin to peel away the covering, what's revealed is the already present wholeness and completeness and perfection that we are. It's already there. And it's the same way with our lives as we begin to let go of those ideas of lack and limitation. All of a sudden, we begin to see all of the abundance that's been around us all the while. So knowing the truth, knowing that we are the golden Buddha, knowing that we are beings of light, and knowing that the presence of the divine that is eternal, all pervasive, the presence of love and good of every kind, that's the truth about this universe that we're living in. And that's the truth about us. So knowing the spiritual truth. Sometimes it's difficult to remember the truth when we're undergoing some sort of a challenge. And that's why community is important, spiritual community. That is when it is important to go and pray with one of our ministers or practitioners, because they can know the truth about you and help you to get reacquainted and realigned with that truth so that you can reveal the golden Buddha that you are. So I would like to end this by all of us doing what I talked about, using the word or the spoken word, the power of the spoken word. So would everybody please stand? And we're going to use some things that they found in neurolinguistic programming and other traditions that really helps us stand in a place of great power. And that means if you're willing to raise your arms up, hold your head up, shoulders back, that means your heart is forward, and say this with great power. I only let words pass through my lips.
I only let words pass through my lips.
That I joyously and eagerly welcome back into my life.
Welcome back into my life.
I only do one thing at a time.
I only do one thing at a time.
Living fully in the now.
Living fully in the now.
As the authentic, powerful self that I am.
As the authentic, powerful self that I am.
I put my relationship with God first.
I put my relationship with God first.
And all else is added.
And all else is added.
I know the spiritual truth.
I know the spiritual truth.
God is all there is.
God is all there is.
And therefore, I am that presence.
And therefore, I am that presence.
I am the golden Buddha.
I am the golden Buddha.
Right here and right now.
Right here and right now.
And for this I give my thanks.
And for this I give my thanks.
And so it is.
And so it is.
Amen.
Amen.
Namaste, my friends. All right.
Yeah, yeah. Sometime in our lives, we all have pain, we all have sorrow, but if we are wise, we know that there's always tomorrow. When you're strong, and I'll be your friend, and I hope you carry on. Oh, it won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody to lean on. Please swallow back if you have things you need to borrow. It won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody.